Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome everyone for the 12th study circle meeting for 2021. Uh, Almost 4.5 years back, when model GST law was introduced. At that time, we remember that there was one phrase which was used very often, seamless credit. As we graduated in last 4 years, somehow that seam word got somehow misplaced, and now we are with less credit right now. So this is a I don't know whether it is a sorry state of affairs or what, but we are really stuck with what the provisions are, and rather complicated provisions. But we have Bharat Bhai with us, who is a master of the profession, to guide us with this complicated topic. That the topic per se is complicated. Also, the name of the topic is also complicated. Mismatching of matching ITC. So looks like more of a tongue twister. So hope by the session is over, we'll be able to come out of this trap of ITC mismatch, and also Bharat Bhai will help us in reciting this tongue twister of mismatch match ITC. Okay, without wasting much time, I request Parth to officially introduce Bharat Bhai.
Hello, friends. I welcome Mr. Bharat Raichandani to this as a speaker in this study circle meeting. Friends, it's a great pleasure to introduce Mr. Bharat Raichandani, and especially the topic is such that it requires a council of great acumen to come out and bring out the nuances that are there in the ITC law. And I've had the fortune of listening to him many times when he's arguing in the court, and I think that there could be no better lawyer or advocate, as we say, to bring out the topic. So with this, I'll start a brief introduction. Mr. Bharat Raichandani, he is a managing partner of UBR Legal, which is a law firm based in Mumbai, and it also has offices in New Delhi and Vapi. He is a university gold medalist at law. The gold medal was awarded to him by the Governor of State of Maharashtra, Shri S.M. Krishna. In the year 1996, he was awarded for outstanding achievement in academics by the then President of Shiv Sena, Shri Uddhav Thackeray. He was awarded Young Achiever Under 40 Award by Legal Era Awards 2018 and Top 100 Legal Falcon Award by Lexi World Talk at Dubai in 2021. He has over 18 years of practice in arguing cases before the Supreme Court and various high courts of the country, including Bombay, Delhi, Nagpur, Goa, Allahabad, Lucknow, Madras, Gujarat, Kolkata, Rajasthan, Karnataka, J&K, and Sikkim. He has successfully argued over 1,000 cases before the CSTAT at Mumbai, Delhi, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Allahabad, and Kolkata. He has argued several matters before the ITAT, VAT Tribunal, NCLT, SEBI Tribunal, and Textile Committee, CES Appellate Tribunal. He is a profound speaker on budget and GST lectures. He has authored several published articles on negative list under service tax, custom valuation, Senvet credit, GST, etc. He has also addressed numerous seminars organized by major industry associations such as CII, IMC, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Chamber of Tax Consultants, Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, etc. With this short introduction, as we say that the introduction is not expansive, it's illustrative. There's a lot more to Mr. Bharat Raichandani, but I would rather have him talk and give his plethora of knowledge to the participants here. I request everyone to welcome him with a round of applause. Mr. Raichandani, you can take over now.
Just an announcement, the presentation is enclosed in the handout section.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much at the outset for inviting me. Okay. And two things. Rajbhai just mentioned that they said seamless credit. Okay. And there is, in fact, he's saying very less credit. Please wait for a day when they will not give you any credit. That day is going to come very soon. Okay. And Parth gave a very, very beautiful introduction. Okay, I don't know whether I'm worthy of that introduction or not, because another 20 minutes you will know that Parth was lying. After you hear me, You will come to know that path was lying. Friends, before we begin and discuss the subject matter which I have been asked to speak on, okay, I always have a rider, okay, and all of us should always have that rider. Whatever I'm about to say in about 45 minutes to 1 hour from now, okay, and subject to the questions that are there, the participants may have after the presentation is over. I just want to add before I begin is that whatever I say, okay, is going to be a matter of my opinion or my view. You may have a different view, you may have a different opinion, okay, and let us respect our mutual differences or difference of opinion, which is very healthy, which is very good, and which should always be invited and appreciated, because that leads to the development of law. If there were no difference of opinions, we would not have so many judgments. Okay, I was reading our bad cases in UK, sir. Okay, there is a book by Tolley's Bad Cases. Okay, it's a book which had about cases from 1993 to 2003. Okay, for about 10 years. It's a 200-page book. Okay, so I was surprised that in 10 years they have paid one book which has only 200 pages. Okay, those are the only rulings of the ECJ rulings. Okay, so then I was telling my colleague, okay, it's a very dangerous place for a lawyer to live. In 10 years, they have only 200 pages. Here we fill up pages after pages. There are monthly issues we have, because we have so many tribunals giving contrary rulings. We have more than 30 high courts now. Tomorrow we may have 32, 33, 35. I don't know, sir. I don't keep track of numbers. I'm very bad with numbers, sir. Please pardon me for that. Okay. So we have so many high courts. Therefore, there are bound to be different rulings. There are bound to be contrary rulings. Okay. And therefore, it is clear that there is bound to be a difference of opinion. Okay. Let us try to resolve this difference of opinion, and let us try to arrive at a consensus if possible. Okay. I am reminded of the words of the Justice Patil in the Supreme Court. Okay. He beautifully points out. He says this about the Supreme Court itself. Okay. We are not final because we are right. We are right because we are final. Okay. Look at the class of the judge. Look at the class of the judge. And were there an appeal against our orders, 50% will be overruled. Okay. Therefore, there is no right, there is no wrong. Okay. It's a matter of opinion. There is no right, there is no wrong. Okay. With this, let us start, sir. Okay. Yeah, next. Okay. You can see the screen, no?
Yes, sir, visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. I'm okay. Before I begin, I'm assuming that people may have some rough idea about these provisions. Therefore, we may not go into depth of these provisions. Okay. We will point out the difficulties in these provisions and the rules there too. Okay. Because mostly these rules only create a problem. Okay. As all of us are aware, sir, when the GST, in fact, when you see the GST model law, when the model law was introduced, they had suggested this concept of inward return and outward return, okay, for availing credit. Okay. This particular provision, which is creating a problem under section 16, which is called the so-called matching provision. That is, if my supplier has not paid the tax, I will not get the credit of that. Okay. This was thanks to the brainchild of our Maharashtra government. Okay, the Maharashtra government had put its foot down, saying that unless you introduce this particular provision, I'm not going to sign the GST bill, because you needed a consensus among the states. Okay, therefore this is a brainchild of the Maharashtra government, saying that okay, unless you have this provision, okay, which is the according to me the mother provision which leads to all this matchmaking. Okay. And as all of you are aware, okay, there can never be a perfect match on Mother Earth. Therefore, it is impossible to have a perfect match in these returns. Okay. Especially when two different entities are involved, two different persons are involved, namely the supplier, the recipient, and the recipient supplier. Okay. Because the chain doesn't end there. Section 37, as all of us are aware, provides for filing of our outward return containing outward supplies. 38 provides for our inward supplies. 40 talks about first return. 41 talks about the claim for input tax credit. 42 and 43 are the main sections which provide for matching and reversal. These provisions we will deal with in slight detail at the later point of time. 44 provides for our annual return, which is the form GSTR 9 if I'm not wrong. Okay. 45 provides for final return. Okay. Now, before we go into what are these returns and what are these forms, okay, there are certain fundamental concepts that I think all of us should keep in mind. Is number one is, what is input tax credit? Input tax credit is a credit of the input tax. Input tax is a tax charged on any supply by the goods or services by the supplier. Okay, please note, this is very important. Input tax has been defined as any tax, CGST, SGST, etc., charged on a supply of goods or services by the supplier. And ITC is a credit of such input tax. Input, definition of input is also there, definition of input service is also there. Input is all goods, input service means all services. The first point that I am trying to make here is that input tax credit is a credit of the input tax charged by the supplier. That is a charge made by the supplier to the recipient. In other words, so long as the tax which has been charged to me becomes my input tax credit. And this is what section 16 refers to. This is what section 16 refers to. I'll show that in a minute. Yes, please see section 16. Section 16 talks about the eligibility and the conditions. Section 16(1) is the eligibility, which is the enabling provision. It is a benevolent provision. It is a provision which allows me to take credit, which grants me the benefit of the input tax credit. Here also 16(1), please note, it says the recipient shall be entitled to take credit of the input tax charged on the supply. Here there is a difference, please note. 16(1) creates a provision where you are granted the benefit or granted the advantage. 16(2) on the other hand talks about, please see 16(2). 16(2), that new clause A which has been introduced, which is the bone of contention throughout. And 16, the conditions, which says that he should have paid tax. Where is that? Therefore, there is a difference in the language between 16(1) and 16(2). 16(1) talks about the eligibility to credit, which grants you the benefit on the input tax charged by the supplier and not the input tax paid by the supplier. This subtle distinction, according to me, has to be argued before a court so as to say that these conditions vis-a-vis read with rule 36 or rule 36(4), rule 36(4), okay, and these challenges, which the challenges in the high courts which are pending where the rule 36(4) has been challenged, this subtle difference needs to be brought about. Okay, and please note, this difference was not there earlier hitherto. Okay. We will deal with this point in detail when we deal with the judgments on these points. Okay. This is the first point that I would like to make. The second point that I would like to make, there is no doubt or no dispute that input tax credit is not your birthright. It is not your fundamental right. This is a general argument raised by the revenue or general flow of the findings of the court in many of these matters, that it is not your fundamental right, it is not your birthright, it is a concession granted by the legislature, and therefore the legislature is within its powers to impose such conditions or restrictions when they grant you a benefit. I have absolutely no quarrel with this proposition. I have absolutely no dispute with this proposition. The submission that I am trying to make is this: having granted me the benefit, having granted me the benefit under 16(1), which is duly complied by me, to impose a restriction which is so onerous that defeats the benefit granted to me under 16(1), can that be sustained? That is the real question that we need to argue, and that is a real question which the court needs to rule in these matters. That is the second point that I am trying to make. The third point that I am trying to make is this: the condition that the tax should have been paid by the supplier, the condition that the tax should have been paid by the supplier effectively results in a situation where my purchases, though I have satisfied all the other conditions, please note I have satisfied all the other conditions, that I have a tax invoice, I have remitted the payment of the supply of the goods and services along with the tax thereon to the supplier. Okay. And the supplier has either delayed or defaulted in making the payment of the tax. I am not on situations, please note, I must at the outset clarify, I am not on situations of cases of fake input tax credit or fraud input tax credit where there are only invoices and there are no goods and services. I have not gone into those cases. I am talking about genuine day-to-day transactions, various situations which can lead to either belated payment of tax or delayed payment of tax, and the probable mismatch due to extensions. There are so many extensions granted. There is no extension granted for GSTR 3. 3 granted, 3B, now 3B. Okay. There was earlier dispute also whether GSTR 3B is a return or not. Okay. The extensions being granted, there is a natural phenomenon which will lead to mismatch. Can that be a ground to deny me credit? According to me, the answer is no. According to me, the answer is in the negative to this question. Okay. We'll see the reasons for that. Let us deal with some rulings. Certainly, they're not directly on the GST law. Earlier also we had these issues under the VAT laws. Okay, the first judgment that I would like to bring to your notice is Arise India Delhi High Court judgment. In this case, there was a challenge to the validity of section 19G, subclause G. 9, sorry, not 19, 9. Section 9 to subclause G, which imposed a condition which is similar to the condition that we are dealing with under GST. Okay. Now, I may say that purely the language of the section may not be identical to section 16(2) condition. Okay. Because this is the reason why the Delhi High Court has distinguished the judgment of the Bombay High Court in the case of Mahalakshmi Cotton and Ginning Mills. Because the Delhi High Court said that Mahalakshmi Cotton and Ginning Mills will not apply in the case of Delhi VAT section 9 to G, for the reason that there this court was concerned with a section which says actually paid. If I am not wrong, the section there you use the term actually paid, and therefore the judgment will not apply. That is one. There, under 9(9)G, the Delhi High Court ruled that the section is violative of Article 14 and Article 19 because there is no reasonable classification laid out in the provision. The section does not make out a classification vis-a-vis bona fide purchasers and the so-called fraudsters that the revenue is trying to seek or trying to curtail or trying to curb or trying to catch. Okay. There is no basis or reasonable classification, and therefore it is violated of Article 14, and therefore the Delhi High Court struck down that provision, rather read down that provision. The provision was read down to mean that this particular provision will apply only in a case where the purchaser or the buying dealer has not complied with the conditions, saying that he has not done due diligence, that the supplier was registered, he has given an invoice, a tax invoice in terms of today's section 31 containing all the details and particulars, and there is an actual supply of goods and services. If these have been complied by the buying dealer or the purchasing dealer, then credit cannot be denied to the purchasing dealer, irrespective of the fact whether the supplier has deposited the tax or not. This particular provision will apply only in a case where the purchasing dealer or the purchaser is at fault, or the purchasing dealer is in connivance with the selling dealer. That is, there are only transactions, paper transactions or paper trails, buying and selling of invoices, and not buying and selling of goods. Okay. This reminds me, one matter had come, one of the clients had come to me. So this was in the VAT regime. So denial of credit, etc. I asked him, what do you manufacture, sir? He said, I manufacture invoices. I said, take your brief back. I will not argue this matter. So the intention of these sections, this particular section, is to tap those type of suppliers and dealers or the purchasing dealers. This cannot be applied uniformly without having regard to the circumstances in which the credit is being availed. This particular judgment of the Delhi High Court was affirmed by the Supreme Court as well. Okay. This particular judgment of the Delhi High Court, according to me, will be very relevant and important even under the GST regime, for the reason that it lays out a principle of reasonable classification, that there is no reasonable classification and therefore the provision has to be read down. Similarly, in the context of section 16(2), read with our rule 60, the forms, okay, rule 60 forms, these provisions are bound to create a mismatch. These provisions are bound to create a problem, and therefore a judgment of the Delhi High Court in Arise India will be relevant. The second judgment is of the recent judgment of the Madras High Court. This is of course in the context of GST itself. This was in the context of Tamil Nadu GST, because sections are the state sections and the CGST sections are almost identical, are all identical. Therefore, they were concerned with the condition of section 16(2) itself, where they said that the subject to provisions of 41, the tax charge in respect of such supply has been actually paid to the government, either through cash or by utilization of credit. In this case, the purchasing dealers had argued that there has been no inquiry conducted at the end of the supplying dealer. There has been no investigation conducted at the supplying dealer, which is registered with the revenue. Who is registered with the revenue, and the revenue has granted him registration. In that event, why no inquiry has been conducted there? In fact, there was a press release in 2018, which was relied upon by the Madras High Court. That press release carved out this explanation or carved out this exception, saying that this particular provision of 16(2) will apply in a case where the supplying dealer is not traceable, or the purchasing dealer is hand in glove with the supplying dealer, that is a case of connivance, etc. And it will not apply in regular cases. Therefore, it will not apply in cases where there is no dispute or there is no doubt about the genuinity of the supply. Therefore, the Madras High Court held that the assessment orders which were passed were bad. They set aside the assessment orders and remitted the matters back to the assessing officer, saying that these are bad because you have not examined the supply dealer and you have not taken any action, because this law provides for recovery action against the supplying dealer as well. Therefore, you have not taken any action for recovery of this tax from the supplying dealer. If you fail in those, then only you can approach the purchasing dealer. If these are not satisfied, if these are not complied, there is no cause or case made out against the purchasing dealer. In fact, if you see the concluding portion of the judgment of the Bombay High Court in Mahalakshmi Cotton also, there in fact the court recorded a statement of the learned Advocate General saying that first the action will be taken against the supplying dealer only, seeking a recovery of the tax. If they fail in that, then only they can come back to the purchasing dealer. Okay. According to me, this judgment is also very important in the context of, because it is in the context of GST itself. Though I must point out, in this matter, there was no challenge to the validity of section 16(2) condition C, nor there was a challenge to the validity of rule 36 or the forms that is provided in rule 60. There was no challenge to the constitutional validity of any particular provision or any particular rule. The challenge was to an assessment order. The challenge was to an assessment order, and on the facts, the Madras High Court held that the assessment orders are bad. Okay. But we can still rely on them, saying that section 16(2)(c) will apply in a case where if you have examined the supplier and come to a conclusion that there was no supply, or you have enforced recovery action against the supplier and you have failed in recovering the tax from the supplier, then only you can come to the purchasing dealer, that is me. These are two important points which flow from the press release as well, that the Madras High Court explained. The third judgment is, this is from again under the Madras Tamil Nadu VAT Act. This again judgment from the Madras High Court which went to the Supreme Court in TVS. Okay. Here essentially the Supreme Court relied upon Jairam and Company, that is also there in our slide. The Supreme Court relied upon Jairam and Company, wherein there was a challenge to the validity of an amendment to section 19(20) of the Tamil Nadu VAT Act, which was introduced with retrospective effect. And that particular section, in that particular provision, the case was this, that where a registered dealer has sold goods at a lesser price than the price of the goods purchased by him, the amount of input tax credit over and above the output tax shall be reversed. In other words, for example, if the goods are sold at the invoice price is 100, tax paid on 100 is say 10%, let us assume, and subsequently there is a discount of 5 offered by the selling dealer or the supplying dealer, the price of the goods becomes 95. Consequently, the credit on that becomes 9.5, and the purchasing dealer will have to reverse the credit of 0.5. That is the effect of that provision. That was challenged before the Madras High Court. The challenge was repelled, and the challenge was upheld by the Supreme Court, saying that this particular provision is not violative of Article 14. Okay. They say that one, ITC, again, input tax credit is a form of a concession which is provided by the legislature, and it is admissible to all kinds of dealers. It is admissible to all kinds of purchasing dealers. And from that, if certain class of dealers are excluded, that exclusion is not hit by the rule of reasonable classification under Article 14. Second, as earlier pointed out by me, that ITC is a conditional concession, If you do not satisfy the condition, you are not eligible for the benefit. And one of the most important points that the High Court pointed out and affirmed by Supreme Court in Jayam and Company was that the section talks about taking credit on the basis of an invoice. And once you have an invoice which is complete in all particulars and shows the output tax, that will be taken as the basis for purpose of taking credit. On this basis, the challenge was repelled. However, the retrospective operation of this provision, that was negated by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that this particular provision, being confiscatory in nature and will lead to affecting an accrued rate of the purchasing dealer, will be confiscatory in nature and therefore will not apply retrospectively. It will be only prospective. It will only be prospective. This judgment was followed by the Supreme Court in TVS Motors case also. In TVS Motor, again, there was a challenge to the validity of Section 19 of the Tamil Nadu VAT Act. Again, here the case was that it was a case of interstate sales. It was a case of interstate sales where there is a sale being made by the state of Tamil Nadu to the state of Karnataka. And therefore, it was necessary for the selling dealer to obtain Form C. Therefore, there was a condition that if you want credit, you get the Form C from the selling dealer. This was repelled. The challenge to validity of this section was upheld, and the challenge was repelled by the Supreme Court on the ground that the state is putting a condition that you must get this form because there is an unregistered dealer in another state. I do not have the wherewithal to go after that dealer. I do not have a wherewithal to go after that dealer, and therefore I impose this condition, and therefore this condition is reasonable. And therefore the validity of this particular condition was upheld by the Supreme Court. Okay. Though in the concluding portion, there was an argument raised by the FSC, which is very relevant for us, saying that I am making supplies to the state of Karnataka. Now, state of Karnataka, as per the definition of dealer, is not required to be registered. Therefore, state of Karnataka will always be unregistered. Therefore, I should not supply to the state of Karnataka at all. There, the court held that the court read down that condition of Section 19(5)(c) to say that dealers who are making exclusive sales to the state of Karnataka will not be governed by this condition, will not be hit by this condition, as the state of Karnataka would be deemed to be a registered dealer. Now, why am I mentioning all these certain points? Okay, as to how they would be impactful or relevant for the purposes of GST today. In my submission, in my view, in my respectful and humble view, the judgment of the Supreme Court in Jayam and TVS Motor may not apply in the context of GST for a variety of reasons. One, we have a uniform tax or a uniform law which applies across the country. Two, all the dealers, the selling dealer and the purchasing dealer, are registered with the revenue. Three, it is the revenue and the revenue alone who grants registration to the selling dealer also. And therefore, the revenue cannot raise their hand and saying that I am not going to go after him, you have to go after him. It's a matter of contract. That's what the reason. If you see the white paper, reason why this particular section was introduced was the government said, sir, what is this credit? It is a matter between both of you. I don't get anything with it. He gives it to me, you take credit of that. The government doesn't get anything in this. And therefore, it is a matter between you two. And therefore, you two should sort it out. And therefore, this condition. And therefore, what? We will sit and we will warm our chairs. We will not do any work. This is essentially what actually the court should have written. The Delhi High Court in Arise, they stopped short of writing that. Okay. The purchasing dealer, according to me, cannot be cannot be vindicated, or we cannot be vindicative against the purchasing dealer or put a premium on the revenues lethargy. These judgments, according to me, may not apply directly in the context of GST. And reason number 4, as I must continue, is today you have a robust, or at least that's what you call. I will be very naive and very small to comment on this. Today you say or you claim that I have a robust information technology system. I have a robust software system. I have created this portal, and this portal contains all details, and every detail of every selling dealer and every purchasing dealer is available to me at the click of a button, which may not be a position hitherto prior to 2017, which may not be a position even under the VAT laws. But today the situation is different, and I have put in a system where I can control this system, online system, and manipulate and maneuver and change your credits. I can block your credits. In such a situation, can these arguments be raised by the revenue? According to me, answer is no. According to me, answer is no. And lastly, according to me, before I go to the next judgments, the most important principle when I read section 16 in its totality, when I read conditions under section 16 to A, B, C, D read together, the essence of these conditions is that there must be an actual supply of goods and services. There should be a genuine sale of goods and services. Physical delivery is not relevant, sir. Please note, everywhere the department says you have not actually got the goods, etc., and therefore goods have not come. Physical delivery, according to me, is not relevant. What the condition of section 16.2 is the receipt of the goods and services. Receipt, according to me, means legal receipt, not actual physical receipt. Okay. So long as the transactions are genuine, so long as the transaction is bona fide, there is no way that the input tax credit can be denied to me. Okay. Then there is one more, as I pointed out, Mahalakshmi caught in the Bombay High Court judgment. Okay. Here again, there was a challenge to the validity of section 48, okay, which provided for set off. Again, the Bombay High Court said the set off, the condition is set off is not your fundamental right. In fact, they dealt with the Punjab and Haryana High Court judgment also. In fact, the Punjab and Haryana High Court judgment, which is followed by the Delhi High Court in Arise India, was distinguished by the Bombay High Court on the ground that probably the judgment of the Supreme Court was not cited before the High Court, and therefore probably the Punjab and Haryana High Court took a different view, and the validity of this section was upheld. I must point out that though the section uses the word actually paid, this was what was emphasis was laid by the revenue before the Bombay High Court in Mahalakshmi, okay. And the same term is being used under section 16.2. Okay. This judgment may still not apply in the context of GST and in the context of the provisions of section 16.1, as I pointed out earlier, read with 16.2. 16.1 points gives the credit for the tax charged and not the tax paid. Therefore, both have to be read together. Then there is a judgment of the Madras High Court in Vinayaga Agencies. This was again in the context of the VAT regime. Okay. This judgment was cited by the assessee in Beathul Enterprises in the GST. There is an observation by the Madras High Court that this judgment may not directly apply in the context of GST. That's the only line of finding. I do not know why it is different, why this judgment will not apply directly. In fact, if you see the provisions that we were concerned, section 19 then, and section 19.116, 19 bracket 16, construing those provisions, the High Court came to a conclusion that input tax credit shall be availed or claimed by the registered dealer on the tax charged, and the assessment order or assessment notices and assessment orders saying that you should ensure that the supplying dealer should have paid tax. The court held these are totally arbitrary and totally irrational, and therefore the court quashed the assessment notices and assessment orders. Here again, please note there was no challenge to the validity of section 19.1 or 1916. Okay, this was a matter where the court interpreted section 1916 to say that these situations will arise. This section can be invoked only in a case where the purchasing dealer has given an incorrect information or an incomplete information or information which is not otherwise in order to the assessing officer, and therefore credit cannot be denied to the purchasing dealer. According to me, this judgment is also very relevant because it points out that a condition that the supplier should have paid tax is onerous. Which one is next? Jam, we have seen it. Ranganathan again is a Madras High Court judgment. Here again, section 19.9 refund of input tax credit. Okay, this is another judgment which deal with input tax credit. Okay, similar principle is there, not much in this judgment. Okay, and the last 2-3 judgments that I have pointed out. Okay, these are matters which are still pending. Okay, they are at either interim stage or notice stage. Notices have been issued. These are petitions which challenge the validity of Rule 36(4). Validity of Rule 36(4) read with section 16. Okay, somebody may argue today that, sir, today section 16 has been amended, that clause AA has been introduced, and therefore it can find parentage to a Rule 36(4) or a condition laid down in Rule 36(4). Okay, according to me, the answer to this question is no. Okay, you cannot place the horse before the cart. Okay, therefore Rule 36(4) will not find parentage to 16 clause AA, and it will be still held to be bad in law according to me. Okay, it's a piece of subordinate legislation. It is well settled that a subordinate legislature, a piece of subordinate legislature, has to conform with the Parent Act. Okay, if the Parent Act does not authorize or does not empower the subordinate legislature to do so, and therefore the action of the subordinate legislature is bad. Okay, this generally happens in the case where they introduce things with rules. The rules have to conform to the parent provision. Okay, now somebody may argue, or the revenue may argue, that, sir, these rules are framed under 164, okay, which is general rule making power. This is a general rule making power, and therefore they find their parentage to the act. Because the rule says whatever for the purpose of carrying out the purposes of the act, the rules can be framed by the government on the recommendations of the council. According to me, the answer will be no. 164 cannot be read on a standalone basis. 164 is a part of the act. You have to look at the entire scheme of the act, and if there is no parent provision authorizing something to be done as per the rules, where they use the term as may be prescribed. 164 will come into picture when the rules are prescribed by the parent statute, and therefore these rules may not find parentage to a parent provision in the act, and therefore these rules, according to me, will fall foul and will be held to be bad in law. Okay, however, this is a matter which the court has to construe, and court has to rule on this. Okay. We'll continue further, sir.
Yes, please. Please,
Okay.
please.
Okay. Now, there are some issues which are generally the issues which everybody is facing with, that or at least which we could think of, or which is supported by questions from the members. Okay. If there are any other questions, okay, we will take them after these questions. Okay. And I must tell you, please don't expect answers from me. Okay, I have no answers to these questions. Okay. The first thing that we must all learn as lawyers, as tax professionals, as chartered accountants, as cost accountants, that the first and most important thing is to identify the problem. Then only we can reach a solution. The problem with in this GST is, and I must give credit to the government, full marks to them, complete marks to them for creating a mess out of it. I am very sorry to say this. Okay. In the name of simplification, in the name of ease, okay, the structure has become extremely complex and it has become like a cobweb. And coupled with the extensions, coupled with the press releases, and coupled with the notifications that we are seeing, okay, I think the law is not even 3-year-old, and we have seen so many amendments to the law itself, let alone the rules. We have seen amendments to the charging section, that is section 7. There cannot be a greater shame than this. And I have absolutely no qualms in saying this, that the GST law, okay, is a poorly drafted legislation and even more poorly implemented legislation. Okay. When we had the best of the model laws at our disposal. This only demonstrates, this please note, this only demonstrates the sheer inclination not to do it or not to do something. Okay. Now let us see what is the status of GSTR 2. Okay. Now this question, according to me, can be answered in 2 parts. Somebody should ask, sir, what is the status prior to January 2021 and what is the status after January 2021? Okay, because all of us know that the rules have been amended. Okay, please note, not amended, rather substituted. Now that has to be seen, sir, because an amendment through a substitution, okay, McDowell, will be as if it was there in that statute book right from day one. Therefore, one of the views can be that this particular rule, that is Rule 60, which has been substituted with effect from 1st of January 2021, would be in the statute book right from day one, or it will apply only from 2021. Suppose it were to apply only from 2021, then what is the status of GSTR 2? GSTR return 2, okay, because now from rule they have removed this GSTR 2 only. Okay, please, you can correct me also, sir, if I'm wrong, sir. Please, if I'm making any mistake, please point out. There is, I do not have any qualms in admitting that I'm making a mistake. Okay, so now from 2021 they have removed GSTR 2 from the rule itself. Okay, then what is the status of GSTR 2? Is it done away with? Because it was all along suspended. It was never implemented. It was never put in place. It was never put in action. So it was all along suspended. Therefore, what is the status of a particular return which was suspended from 2017 to 2021, and after 2021 it loses existence? Okay. According to me, up till 2021, okay, till GSTR 2 is put in place, according to me, this matchmaking cannot happen. Okay. Because this is also subject to 43A. If you see section 43A, which is not yet been operative, and subject to section 41. Okay. Till the time GSTR 2 is put in operation or put in place, okay, this matchmaking cannot happen. This is my view. Okay. Somebody may say, sir, no, now we have 2A, we have 2B. Okay. I don't know how many returns we will have, 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, all ABCD we will done. Okay. According to me, GSTR 2 till the time they implement till at least 2021, Okay, this matchmaking cannot happen. Post 2021, this GSTR2 has been done away with. Okay, has been done away with. Therefore, post 2021, the forms would be GSTR2A and GSTR2B. Okay. Can matchmaking provision start without GSTR2? Answer according to me is no. What about application of Rule 36(4) in absence of GSTR2? Okay. Now, what is this 36(4)? 36(4) provides for notional credit, okay, or additional credit, or mercy credit, as I call it, mercy credit. Initially, it was 20%, then it became 15, then it became 10, then it became 5. Okay, they will take it away also. What is this additional credit or this notional credit or this mercy credit? Okay. Your inward matches with your outward, then I will give you that credit. Whatever inward is not reflected in your 2A, whatever inward is not reflected in your 2A, 5% additional. Today 5%, earlier 20, now it has become 5. Am I at the mercy of 36(4) to claim that credit? According to me, answer is no. 36(4) does not find parentage to the provisions. Okay. Now you may say that subclause AA, the subclause AA which has been introduced in section 16 and which has been given effect to, provides and says that the details of the invoice of the debit note referred to in clause A has been furnished by the supplier. The term used there is furnished. Earlier it was uploaded. Earlier it was, the term used was uploaded, and now the section uses the term furnished. It says details of the invoice furnished by the supplier in a statement of outward supplies, and the details have been communicated to the recipient of invoice in such manner as been specified in section 37. Now, what is the validity of this particular section itself is a question. Okay. What is the validity of this particular provision itself is a question, but now it forms part of section 16, 16(1) AA, sorry, 2, 16(2) AA. Okay. Can 36(4) now find parentage to clause AA? And suppose clause 36 was introduced today after introduction of AA. Could it be said to be valid? According to me, answer is still no. It is still not valid. It is still not valid, and this credit cannot be denied to you. Can one upload invoices in GSTR1 after deadline? Answer is yes. Answer is yes. You can upload invoices in the GSTR1 even after the timeline. You will have some late fee, etc. That is different matter. Okay. When GSTR1 is not allowed to update, can they disallow ITC for want of 2A? Okay. Suppose you cannot update your GSTR1. Can the credit be disallowed because it does not reflect in your 2A? Okay. According to me, the answer is no. For the reason, I've given 5 reasons. I'll give one more additional reason. Please let us all remember that this system, this portal, has been created for ease and for convenience of filing of returns, payment of taxes, availment of credit, etc. The form and the system cannot override the law. Computer has not made man. Please remember, man has made computer. Therefore, the systems will never be perfect because man is not perfect. Therefore, if the statute allows you something which your portal may not allow, if the statute allows, the statute will allow, you will get the benefit. Which is the correct form 2A or 2B for claim of ITC? Today, after the introduction of clause A, it will be 2B. because 2B is what actually has been paid by the supplier. 2A is all the supply invoices uploaded by him. 2B is the actual tax paid by him. Today, I think after the Finance Act, okay, it will be 2B. Can the department block ITC for want of 2A? Answer is no. I am very clear in my mind, no. Can the department block ITC despite it is reporting 2A? Answer is no. This blocking of credit cannot be used as a handle or a tool of operation or suppression of the SSC, or not a measure to augment the revenue. As we are seeing in the newspapers every day, this month's collection is 1 lakh crore, 1 lakh 10,000 crore, 1 lakh 20,000 crores. What is actually that 1 lakh crore? Nobody knows. How much tax has come by blocking these credits, by disallowing these credits? And what will happen when actually these credits are being allowed? Nobody wants to talk about that. What will happen when you actually have to refund this money to the taxpayer or the SSC? These entire figures are coming from that only. Okay. What is the meaning of the term provisional acceptance of credit and final matching? Okay. As per 49, okay, what comes in your credit ledger or your input tax credit ledger, okay, is a provisional credit. Is a provisional credit which is subject to final matching, final matchmaking. Provisional acceptance of credit would mean that I, as the legislature, hereby allow you to take credit subject to verification. Subject to verification. It does not mean that subject to denial. Even otherwise, whatever credit you take is otherwise subject to 16(1). You are otherwise subject to section 16(1), which is the enabling provision, which allows you to take credit. The verification can be done qua 16(1) itself. These are all, according to me, measure. These are all, according to me, in my respectful view, only means or methods or modes of denial of credit. Because the only way that I can augment my revenue is by blocking your credit, by collecting tax at both ends, at the supplier's end and the recipient's end, which, according to me, the court today or tomorrow will see through and will lead to reading down of such provisions, even if not striking down of such provisions. It will lead to reading down of the provisions. Okay. This is what I wanted to say, sir. Okay. Anything else if we have, sir? We can take question or answer, sir.
Yes, sir. We have few questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Sejal madam, 1 second.
Yeah.
Mr. Rajadhani, that was a very good lecture. What you were actually, I would like to discuss this thing, and I would like your point on this. Is that when we are talking about ITC not being a right, I mean that we've been knowing since Godrej Boys and everything. And to be honest, there is a lot of lot of gravitas actually given to this Mahalakshmi judgment, which I feel that it's not. I mean, in the larger scheme of things in GST, especially with 48(5) being very different. But what I actually want to say is that when, like you quite rightly pointed out about Arise and other judgments like Jayam and everything. Now, if we look at our 16(2)(c), and if we look at how 16 in fact starts, it starts with the word entitled. Now, whether the word entitled, because entitled, is actually giving someone some right, or I mean not really a right, giving someone something. So whether the actual word being used, entitled, adds much more significance to the arguments, whether it comes to not paying or matching or something, or whether entitled is just a word. I mean, that is what I would like you to.
No, this is, in fact, it's a good question, Paul. In fact, this is what I was trying to highlight is that 16(1) is the enabling provision. It is the provision which grants you the benefit.
प्रवीण जी आपको एक नंबर भेजा है, उसको नया मेंबरशिप लेना है, उसको क्या भी कॉल
16(1) cannot be read or construed in a manner so as to defeat 16(1). Conditions under 16(2) are compliance. The compliance cannot be in such a manner so as to negate 16(1). I'll give you a simple example. You apply to a college or a university for admission. There is an admission form. The admission form lists out the eligibility criteria. Eligibility will be you should be 10+2 pass. You have done that. You are 10+2 pass. And you must have scored in your 10th standard X percentage. That is the eligibility criteria. You satisfy the eligibility criteria. And the condition is that you shall pay 10 rupees for the form, etc. You shall submit the form by so and so date. You shall not do these things, and you shall do these things. Now these, when I apply, when I fill up a form, I am eligible. Can the admission itself be denied to me on the ground that you have not complied with these conditions? According to me, answer is no. It cannot be denied on the ground of eligibility. Compliance with the conditions are always subject to the eligibility. Okay. This is what the Supreme Court in Mangalore Fertilizer explains. Okay. There are conditions and conditions. Merely because they are statutory, you will not give equal weightage to them. Some may be procedural, some may be substantive. Therefore, do not give equal weightage to everything. Here, in my view, the substantive condition in 16(2) is the receipt of the goods and services. If that is complied, then credit cannot be denied to me. That is a substantive condition. And therefore, the section has to be read in such a manner, having regard to the entire scheme of the Act, having regard to the fact that GST was introduced. If you see the statement of objects and reasons of GST, okay, their principal aim was to allow credit. That is the only reason why they had brought in this particular law. The only reason why, one of the principal reasons why they introduced this law was because there was cascading. Maharashtra VAT and Karnataka VAT were different. Central excise was not available against VAT. Therefore, the principal reason why they introduced this particular law was so that we can create a seamless flow of credit. All purchases, all supplies will suffer tax, and you will be eligible for credit at all stages. So having regard to the scheme of the Act and the intent of the legislature, read with section 16(1), which is very essential, which nobody has till date construed, has to be construed by the court. And as you rightly point out, it grants you the entitlement of the tax charged by the supplier.
And also mainly because if we go further, I think section 2D or something. Now, when they talk about whether it should match with 2A and all, what it basically talks about, you should have an invoice, there should be delivery of goods and whatever, there should be payment, so and so. And the last provision is that the person who is claiming the credit has to file return. It is not actually talking about the other person. That is also very important because.
Yes, there is no condition that he should have filed his returns. There is a condition that I should file my returns.
Yes.
Okay, that return is important. No, that is important because they want to verify my credit. The supplier's credit, they want to verify my credit. Therefore, if my supplier wants to take credit of his purchases, he should have filed his returns so that this credit can be verified. According to me, this entire exercise, of the revenue base is based on only and only two legs or two arguments. One is to check evasion, and two, that this credit does not belong to me, this credit belongs to you. I as the government doesn't get anything in this. It is purely a pass-through credit, which is your credit. Therefore, you ensure that the credit has been come to this kitty, and then you are eligible to take the credit. Okay. That, according to me, cannot be an argument, cannot be an answer to say that I will sit and warm my chair and I will deny credit to the purchasing dealer without. That's the answer, sir. Okay. My
Yes.
incompetency, sheer incompetency. Okay. And this argument there, it is really, I think some court should take strong objection to. Had I been there, we should have taken strong objection to this argument is being made before the court that the Union of India is so handicapped, is so small that I cannot find a dealer who has cheated me. And therefore I go after the purchasing dealer. And this argument, according to me, should be only stated to be rejected. 80% of the litigation that we see in our country is against the Union of India. They cannot say that we are small, or we don't have the wherewithal to tackle these people. If that be so, my question to that argument would be, who gave them the registration? They are all registered dealers. From where did they come? If you have given them registration under 22, if you have given them registration, you have not verified anything. Their place of business, they should have a place of business. You have not verified anything, and therefore you should suffer.
No, absolutely. In fact, one of the in the tribunal, one of the opposing counsel was, during one of my argument, he was saying that these dealers, lordship, they are who are, you give them vada pav, they will do anything you want. So I said, while giving the registration, did they give you the vada pav? Because they say that these dealers are in whatever urinals, they are registered over there. What were you doing while you were granting them the registration? That question, I think that an appropriate court someday would have to take cognizance of that.
Even otherwise, under GST today, you can see on the online portal itself that their status is live. They are filing their returns. They are existing. They have a registration. In such a situation, when you can see them live online on the so-called this portal that you have created, that Brahmaji also could not have made. And therefore, you should feel proud and take pride in your system. Go and find out from this system.
Absolutely.
Sir, there is a one issue that when you are a registered dealer, then before your pre-registration, in certain cases, you are allowed to grant the ITC. But there is no provision to upload the invoices for my pre-registration period. Now, you say that is a very, even I asked this to our Rajiv Jalota sir when he was the commissioner, that you have not made a provision to upload the invoices for the registered dealer when they subsequently become registered. But you allow the ITC for my pre-registration period. Now, how do I get the ITC down? Now, section 16(2)(a), as it is proposed, now it is not implemented, that I don't get the ITC unless the invoices are furnished and uploaded by the other person. Now, in such cases, what will the scenario? So then 16(1) and 16(2) is to be read harmoniously. And another entire act is to be read in toto, as you said rightly. So when the portal did not allow to upload the invoices, then my right for claim of the ITC cannot be defeated.
Absolutely, sir. Your right to credit is from 16(1). None of the conditions under 16(2) can take away your right. Especially as you pointed out, okay, for the fault of the portal or fault of the provision for allowing me this benefit or for the grant of the benefit through your system. Let us take a simple case, sir. Let us take a very simple case. If all this was manual, if everything was manual, let us assume there is no online system. let us assume everybody had to make a buy khata or maintain a register, what would they have done? I asked myself this simple question, sir. Okay, let us assume there were no these computers in this online system. I had to fill this form manually. Whatever form you are giving me, GSTR 1, 2, 3, 4, 2A, 2B, whatever forms you are giving me. Suppose I were to fill it manually, including our Tran 1, etc. I were to fill it manually and hand it over to you manually. What would you have done? You would have asked for copies of, suppose I list out that this is my input tax credit. These are my invoices. These are 10 are my invoices. What would you have done? You would have asked me to take copies of 10 invoices. You would have verified. You would have physically verified these invoices, whether you have got the goods or services or not. You
Correct.
would have physically verified the registration of the supplying dealer.
Yes.
And in that event, if you find that the supplying dealer has not paid the tax, what would you have done? You would have gone after the supplying dealer. Today, because of the online portal, you have the power to block my credit. Immediately at the click of a button, you have power to block my credit and saying that your ITC electronic credit ledger is blocked. You please pay through electronic cash ledger only. These issues are arising.
Yeah.
Therefore, I have been saying this right from day one. Systems cannot prevail over the law. The systems are created only as an aid, okay, only as a matter of procedure, only as a matter of convenience. Okay, as the Supreme Court says, these are procedures, and procedures are handmaid of justice, not its mistress.
Correct.
Cannot be, can never be. Therefore, I do not think that these can be reasons for denial of credit, which is my substantive right.
I guess
And
this is
also
what
there
happens
is-
when you make the law from a evader's point of view. This is what you are going to do. I mean, if you think that sub chore and you forget about the 95% who are actually the actual amount, the actual tax collection is voluntary, and you still make the law from the evader's point of view, this is going to be the result.
No, I have no
sir,
difficulty with that also. No, I have no difficulty with that also. You make a law for the evaders. Please check evasion. Have a different class. This is what the Delhi High Court correctly, in my opinion, pointed out. That we are not finding fault with you when you say that, sir, there is large-scale evasion. In fact, even if you see the House of Lords judgment in UK also, there are cases of colossal fraud. Colossal fraud is nothing but our input tax credit frauds, our earlier excise mod VAT frauds, where there were only invoices, no goods. Today, only invoices, no goods and services. I am not supporting that at all. I am totally with the government. I am totally with you. I am totally with you saying that yes, these cases are there. They account for 5% or 7% or 10% of the total tax revenue. I agree with you. Please make a provision. Please be strict with them. But have two different provisions. Please do not make one provision and give a handle in the hand of the tax officer to exploit a genuine taxpayer or a bona fide taxpayer or a bona fide purchaser who has absolutely no control over the supplier. Effectively, what they are trying to say is, or they are trying to do is, that you have to manage, you have to control the systems of the supplier. And this supplier may be one of the thousands of vendors that I have. It is not possible for me to control these vendors. And I can, as a purchasing dealer, only and only ensure that I buy from a registered dealer. And once I buy from a registered dealer, it ensures that he is a bona fide supplier who has been given benefit of certificate by the department, from the department itself. And hence these conditions, according to me, are clearly onerous. And therefore, today or tomorrow, according to me, some court should strike it down, or rather read it down, as the Delhi High Court did in Arise India.
Sir, one more, the mismatch of the matching is that Rule 60 is amended from January, substituted from January 21. But Section 38 still casts an obligation on the taxpayer to furnish the details of inward supply. That is not deleted. Now, when
Rule
the
38.
Section 38,
Section 38, okay.
that also casts an obligation on the taxpayers to furnish the details of inward supply.
Correct.
And now
correct.
they have substituted the Rule 60. Now the question is, sir, that I agree with the matching, okay, but then match with whom? There has to be A and there has to be a B. When you're not given me the B, how can you match? And that is why we say mismatch of matching, sir. So now what is the status post January 21? Sir, post January 21, that having the provision to file the return in inward supply in Section 38. Now you have deleted, you have not prescribed the form R2, you are not given me a facet to furnish my details of inward supply till today. And then your Section 41 is not amended, your Section 42 is not amended, Rule 69 to the onwards, which provides the matching provision, and Rule 69 provides that the matching will start only when I furnish my return of inward supply. I mean, that is there, sir. Now, when A is there, B is not there. And still the Section 16(2) says that my ITC I would be able to claim only when the supplier furnishes the invoices. But with whom I will match? And Section 41 says that provisional acceptance of the credit. So now in this scenario, sir, I want your opinion, sir, that what does taxpayers right to claim the ITC when the 2 is not there? Section 41 says it is a provisional acceptance of the credit. And you have not given me 2, sir. That is the heading of the mismatch of matching, sir.
Sir, what happens if you give a matchbox to a 2-year-old? He will put the entire house on fire, no?
Yeah, yes, sir.
This is exactly what is happening, sir. This is exactly what I wanted to say. The entire law is being controlled and managed by the executive, whereas their role is only to execute, not to legislate. Rules are being introduced left, right, center. Every day, every month, we have some notification bringing an amendment to the rules. The rules, as I told you earlier, is a piece of subordinate legislation. The rules have to conform to the parent provision, which is the Act of the Parliament, the Act of the People of India. If there is any conflict, between the parent act and the rule has to go. The rule will fall foul and the rule will struck down as being invalid or bad. Here in your case, what you're trying to point out is precisely that. You are trying to point out that Section 38 provides for furnishing of an inward return. 41 and 42 continue to remain the same, which provide for a provisional credit. Whereas now, Section 16 has been introduced, Clause A, and this particular Rule 60, which has been substituted, which does not provide for a GSTR2. And therefore, there is a clear mismatch as to why I can match if I have an inward and an outward. If I don't have an inward, how do I match it with the outward? Therefore, there is no match. For making a match, you need a boy and a girl, no?
Yeah, yes,
There is no girl. Where will be the Swayamvar, no?
yeah.
Okay, that is what you're trying to say. It's absolutely right.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, sir.
So now you see, we have the Section 16, which gives the entitlement, and the conditions are made in such a way it is impossible to perform. So doctrine of impossibility, what is now the judges have said now, doctrine of impossibility, that comes into play within the section itself. We are talking about act and rules. Now I am talking about the contradiction within the section itself only.
For that ground only, sir, it will be read down. It has to be read down.
It has to be read down.
It has to be read down. It has to be read down where the statute requires you to do something which is impossible. Then it is no statute. Then it is no law. Law cannot ask you to do something which is impossible of being performed, or impossible of being managed, or if impossible of being or capable of being performed. Then it will be struck down on that ground. It will be struck down on that ground.
Thank you,
Sejal
sir.
madam, you can take up questions now.
Yeah.
Yes, sure. Yeah, it was very enlightening to hear to you, sir. The live examples. Okay, so the first question is, for discount given on sales, have I to reverse the input tax against that purchase?
Sorry, madam, I did not get the question.
Oh, out of syllabus.
Out of the
The query is, it's okay.
No, you can take that, madam. You
Okay,
please
sure.
ask.
We will skip that.
Please ask, madam. Whatever
Okay,
question.
it is relating to discount given on sales. Now, whether okay, sure. The query is regarding discount given on sales. Have I to reverse the input tax against that purchase?
If you have not claimed a refund, no reversal. So suppose you are selling dealer. I know this section. This comes from section 15.2. This question is coming from section 15.2. Okay. If I sell at 100 and then I give a discount of 10, but if tax is paid on 100, I'm eligible for credit of 100. But if you subsequently reduce the tax to 90, that is 9, then you will have to reverse 1.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Then the next question is, I have missed to take the transition credit of 50% excise duty on purchase of fixed asset related to the financial year 16-17. I identified the same in asset side of the balance sheet. Just a second. I think it's relating to that, yeah. I have filed Tran 1, but not include. Can I take the said 50% credit now in GST in the month of May 21? This is relating to 16-17.
If you have shown it in the
The
Tran.
excise duty on the purchase of.
This was not shown in the Tran 1.
Yes. No, it was not shown in Tran 1 credit.
Okay, the question seems to be that there is certain input tax credit which I have not reflected in my Tran 1, or I forgot to take it in the Tran 1. Now during the course of audit, my auditor said, Mr. You were entitled for this credit also. Can I take it in May 2021? Okay.
Yes.
Please put it in your GSTR 3B, okay, and take that credit. But it will be highly litigative. You have to fight for it, madam.
But this is in relation to purchase of a fixed asset.
Yes, that is what I'm saying. Please take it in May 2021
Okay.
in your GSTR 3B, but it will be litigative. जहाँ पे ये इजी क्रेडिट है, डायरेक्ट क्रेडिट है, वो भी सरकार नहीं देती है, तो आपको ये क्रेडिट तो झगड़ा करना ही पड़ेगा.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir. Then the next one is, if GSTR 3B for the month of March 2020 is filed after 25th of October 20, then department will disallow the ITC claim in GSTR 3B of March 2020.
No. I know this is coming from section 16.4 condition, but no, answer is no according to me. No.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Then the next one is IGST of October 2019 wrongly claimed in GSTR 3B as CGST and SGST due to accounting entry instead of IGST. Up till September 20 also, if IGST was not claimed in GSTR 3B, then whether it will be required to be lapsed, or is there any other solution for the same? Because as you know that they have to pay the CGST and the SGST.
Okay, so there is a provision which says that the government says, I recognize that you can make a mistake, but you please correct it. So if you have taken IGST instead of CGST and SGST, okay, that is a general mistake that we do, because IGST is fully creditable. Okay, you can utilize it and mop it up in the same breath. Whereas CGST and SGST you may take time. Therefore, these are really actually cash flow issues only. According to me, not matters relating to affecting the revenue of the government. Therefore, these are purely revenue neutral. And therefore, the section says you pay this. Okay. In the month that you pay the actual CGST and SGST, you can take back the credit of IGST irrespective of the time limit. According to me, irrespective of the time limit, you'll be eligible for credit.
You can still take it. Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Then the next one is relating to Rule 36/4, getting power from Section 16(1), which states that the registered person shall, subject to such conditions and restrictions as may be prescribed, be entitled to take credit. The word prescribed is defined to mean prescribed by rules. Now, in this backdrop, can one argue that 36(4) is a restriction in lieu of Section 16(1)?
Okay, very good question. Okay, first I must say very good question. Answer is no. Okay, for two reasons. One, the conditions and restrictions are provided in 16(2) itself. A subordinate legislature cannot provide for conditions and restrictions. That has to be provided by the parent statute itself. That has to be provided by the parent statute itself. As may be prescribed refers to as may be prescribed by the rules. The rules are only procedural. The rules can provide for the manner in which you will file the returns, you will take the credit, the forms in which you will file the return and take the credit, the procedure that you will do to make the compliance. The rules are only always a piece of subordinate legislature relating to the procedural aspects, and therefore they will provide for only the procedure. The rules cannot lay down conditions. Suppose tomorrow, take a simple case where they say, rule says if you don't take credit on the same day, credit lapses. That is a restriction or a condition. That's a condition. Will it be traced to 16(1)? Answer in my respectful submission is no. That cannot be. Okay. The legislative function cannot be abdicted. A legislative function cannot be abdicted or cannot be sub-delegated to the executive. That power cannot be subdelegated. That remains with the legislature only, that remains with the parliament only. That is why, as Janak Bhai correctly pointed out, now there is a conflict. There is a conflict between 16(2)A and 16(1). That is a conflict which we need to resolve. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In relation to this only, the same participant asked, hence the theory that Rule 36(4) was always valid and constitutional. Section 16(1) and 16(2) both mention the word entitled to credit. That's what I think you explained. Yeah. Okay. The next one is, will the credit be restricted or denied after 16(2)AA if not appearing in 2B? Will it be treated as condition precedent for claiming the credit?
That's what seems to be the intention of the government. Whosoever is asking this question, you are right. That's what seems to be the intention of the government, that after 16(2)AA, read with 36(4), that seems to be the intention that unless it is reflected in your 2B, whatever tax has been paid by the supplier, I will give you that much credit only. Okay. But according to me, that is not the correct interpretation, but that seems to be the intention.
But sir, now we have got the 2 and 2B now. We have got 2 and 2B.
2A and 2B, yes.
So now the conflict between the 2 and 2B. Now 2B is a static.
Yeah.
2B, that it is generated on a specific date.
Correct.
Now that is always prior to my date of filing of the return. Now
10th or 11th.
on the date of filing of the return, if it is already reflected in 2A, then I should be allowed to claim the credit, because the
Yes.
section 16(2)(a
Yes,
doesn't
yes,
say 2A or 2B.
yes, please. That is what I'm trying to say. Whatever is
yes.
reflected in your 2A, please take.
Yeah.
Please take. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
Their
yes,
intention
barabar.
seems to be what the participant is pointing out, but that is not the law. Please take what is there in your 2A.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that answered one more question by Ms. Divya. She had the same query. Which one to be taken, 2A or 2B?
2A,
Okay,
2A.
2A, yes. So the next question is, in one of the cases, the taxpayer has taken less credit as compared to books in the financial year 1920. And now in 21-22, he realizes that the credit has not been taken. So now can he take the credit? But in 2021, his business had no transactions.
See, again, I'll tell you, according to me, you can take that credit, but it will be litigative. But what are you going to do with that credit if you don't have any output supply? Unless you have a case that you are under 54, you are eligible for a refund. Unless you are eligible for a refund of input tax credit, whether you take it today, it will not be of any purpose to you if you don't have any output. If I understood the question correctly.
Yeah. So, but in 2021, can he take the credit of that or no? The question is related. He can. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And the next one is, if the purchaser recovers the tax amount from the vendor for non-payment, then the ITC taken will have to be reversed along with interest, or how is it like? What would be the procedure?
No, therefore the question seems to be the purchaser has recovered ITC.
He recovers the tax amount from the vendor for non-payment.
Okay, very good.
He's a fortunate person.
Very good,
These are
very lucky.
these are very rare cases.
No, very good question, but very lucky man. Okay, so his question seems to be, the participant's question seems to be that the supplier has raised an invoice for 100 plus 10. Assume 10, not 18, not 28, etc. He has recovered 100 plus 10 from me. Okay, he has not paid 10. Therefore, I recover 10 from him. I say that you have not paid to the government, you give it to me. What will be the question related to credit? Will I still be eligible for credit?
No, reversal with interest or not.
Whether I have to reverse the credit.
And
Whether
with
I have to
interest.
reverse the credit and reverse it with the interest. Okay. Is there a provision for reversal?
Reversal to hai na, sir. He has not paid, na. That is what he is asking.
No. Okay, I am of the view that no reversal is required. But even if reversal is required, there will be no interest liability. There will be no interest liability.
Okay. Thank you for that. So kindly, please opine on section 16(4).
On the time limit, 16(4).
Yes.
What is the question on 16(4)?
No, it's
The
just
time
that
limit
just
is,
give your views on.
Okay,
time
somebody
limit
is
is of
saying,
the
how
next
are you
return.
saying all these things? Why are you saying when there's a time limit? Saying that by the September of the following month or the annual return, whenever you file that will be the time limit. Okay.
Yeah.
If you see, okay, there was an amendment to 16(4) also, but that was relating to your debit note, etc. Okay.
Only debit
There
note,
they
yeah.
wanted to in fact remove the time limit relating to the debit note. Okay. Debit note obviously will relate to some invoice. Okay. A debit note will obviously relate to some invoice. The invoice of that particular year will not be relevant, but debit note that date you raise the invoice. If you see 16(4), okay, if you see 16(4), it says you shall not be entitled to take input tax credit. Stop at that. Stop at that. Don't read anything further. Stop at that. You shall not be entitled to take input tax credit charged by a supplier. In respect of an invoice, after the due date for furnishing your return under final return or your 39 return, for the month of September following the end of the financial year, to which such invoice pertains. Now here, according to me, there are two crucial terms. Shall not be entitled, 1, to take input tax credit, 2, and 3, pertains. Here, there is a scope for interpretation. Okay, on the basis of which I am trying to say that even today you will be eligible for credit, but it will be highly litigated. 16.4 does not provide for a time limit of the date of the invoice. 16.4 does not provide for a time limit of the date of the invoice. It doesn't talk about date of invoice. It talks about invoice pertaining. Okay. And therefore, according to me, even today you will be eligible for credit of these periods. Okay. But it will again be highly litigated. Revenue is not going to allow you to take these credits. They are going to object to it, and you will have to fight for it.
Now, but suppose now they have allowed now the amnesty scheme that I can file my return today
Yes.
by paying and there is a waiver of the and that. Now, when I'm filing the return after the due date of the September of the following year, then still 16.4 will deny my ITC. That is very dangerous situation.
No, sir. No, these are special. No, this is a special situation really because of this particular pandemic situation where they are particularly extending these timelines. They are extending these due dates, and therefore, if you file a return today, you'll be eligible for all those credits. It cannot be one-way street. It can never be one-way street.
Then you see now we have got the cancellation of the registration by the department, Shivomoto. And there were so many cancellation in the earlier period, and then I filed the appeal, and I filed the High Court and etc. And then once my cancellation is revoked, then I am required to file the return. Now, when I'm filing the return in those cases, it will be naturally after some cases it will be after the due date of the September. Now, in such cases also they have issued the notice department that you withdraw your ITC because you have claimed after the due date of the return.
No, sir. According to me, that is incorrect. Because the period for which your license should be revoked and again reinstated by the court or the court's order will be excluded. That period will stand excluded. Though Section 14 of the Limitation Act may not apply directly, that is what the Supreme Court explains in MP Steel, that the principles of Section 14 will apply. Section 14 may not apply directly, but the principles will apply. Therefore, from the day your license stood cancelled or revoked until the day it was restored, that period will stand excluded. That is one. Another doctrine, there is a doctrine called doctrine of relation back. Doctrine of relating back. You are being related back or relegated back to stage 1, to day 1. And therefore, everything that you do on day 1 will be as if you are standing on that day. There's a doctrine of relating back, relation back. Generally, when you see in the courts also, they remit the matter back or remand the matter back. What do they do? They bring you back to square 1 or that same position where you had started. So you cannot say that I will ignore what has happened. Yes.
Okay. Now for the persons like me who are not lawyer, you gave me the one more doctrine.
No, these are
No, we can think.
These are
But sir,
general.
I do agree, but person who is not a lawyer, they do not know the general principles, no, sir, for ordinary and common man. So now
You
I
are
will have
neither,
to.
you are neither ordinary nor common.
Yes, thank you,
Okay,
sir,
sir,
for that. Then the last two questions left. So whether Tran 1 can be termed as input tax credit and provisions of section 73 and 74 will apply to that, and whether Tran 1 can be termed as yeah, same thing, it's repeated twice.
No, according to me, Tran 1 is not a return. Okay, it's a form.
Okay.
It's a form. What form? Whatever you already have. And give the same details or the same data that is already there with you. Okay. Whatever was already available with you earlier as of 30th of June is the same thing that I collate and put it, most importantly, on an online portal. So from physical or manual, I put it in online. That's it. According to me, Tran 1 does nothing beyond it. Tran 1 does nothing beyond it. Tran 1 is not a return, it's simply a form. Therefore, we must not equate it with a return, and therefore 73 will not apply to Tran 1. 73 will apply to your returns.
Okay. Yeah, thank
Very
you, sir. So then, to take the ITC as per 2A, but 3B auto populates as per 2B.
This is a problem. That's what I told you. This problem is there.
But sir, it is editable, sir. That 3B that gives me the chance to edit
Sir,
it
no,
also.
if you have any system related problems, please, I must tell you, if you have any system or portal related problems, sir, you have to call Infosys, not me. Okay. They can only edit these things.
So, but what could be the, so in relation to this, what could be the rationale for the same? And that the government is trying to match it to be only more, so it is inserted in Rule 60 also.
No, the intention is this only. The intention of the executive seems to be this only, that I will give you credit of only tax which is actually paid by the supplier, and therefore if it reflects in your 2B, I will give you credit of that only. If your supplier doesn't pay, I don't care. I am not bothered. I will not give you credit because it is easier for me not to give you credit than recovery of that tax from that supplier. Because if I have to go after that supplier, I have to employ manpower, I have to employ effort, then I have to litigate, I have to issue him a show cause notice, I have to go through appeals to recover that tax from him, or enforce recovery measures to recover that money from him. Instead, it is easier for me to take care at the recipient end by denying you credit. I achieve the same result with minimal effort.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. That's good. Two more
Questions
questions
are
have come. Yeah, just two more questions have come
Yes.
again. If the vendor to Maharashtra, where he delivers the goods to Goa registration, and of course the GSTR 1 in Maharashtra is unable to amend the said mistake, will the credit in Goa be denied? He's registered on Goa, so will that be denied?
This is again a procedural issue. This is a procedural defect. This is a procedural defect. According to me, the credit cannot be denied on this count.
Okay. And we have the last question. Sir, during 1920, if the dealer failed to claim or avail IGST in GSTR 3B, and same is noticed at the time of GST audit in December 20, whether we can claim that IGST in GSTR 3B of December 20?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. I think that was all. And yeah, one more fundamental question. Portal denies ITC where supply is different from the recipient state. Is that having any legal backing?
Supplier, kindly repeat the question, madam. The
The portal denies ITC where the ITC is different from the recipient state. Is this having any legal backing? This is relating to place of supply.
oh, this
place of
question. Okay.
Place
this
of
question-
supply is different from the place of supply is different from the recipient state. Yeah.
This question is really a practical question where the place of supply is different from the. Sorry. According to me, there is no legal backing for this. This is what the system has generated. You will have to litigate and dispute these points, saying that the statute does not provide for any such thing, and therefore you cannot deny me credit. Invite a speaking order, and that should be challenged. Invite a rejection everywhere, wherever I'm saying that you can do that. You please invite a rejection, and then we can take it to court.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if there
All
is
questions are
excess,
done, madam?
yeah, one. I think people
I
are
think this
becoming
is
like
the last
yeah,
question.
the last
now.
one, last one. Yes.
Last one.
Excess ITC since not available in GSTR 2A, directed by the officer to reverse during the GST audit. And suppose there is balance in the credit since July 17 till date of reversal, then interest to be paid since officer intimates to pay interest.
No. No.
Okay. I think that was a questionnaire for you. That was really well
Yeah.
answered, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Bharat, this has been one of the most interactive study circles, I must say. So all credit to you. And Sejal madam, the other thing is that the departmental officers misguide you so much that they will always say pay under 74.5. वो तो भूल से भी मत भरना, because all their notices say 74.5. That is an admission of fraud. that is all their notices say that.
And they will ask you to make a payment in the DRC 03. They will say there is no other form of payment. The DRC 03 is nothing a voluntary payment. Okay. Assuming, let me answer this also, Parth is rightly pointed out, because all of us face this issue that they come like hounding dogs. Okay. Okay.
I paid that.
No, I'm not saying. I am saying with this, with
Okay.
greatest respect. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you have to give in to their demands, and if you have to give in to their pressure, or if you have to give in to their threats, or if you have to give in to their coercion, okay. Any payments that you make, whether you pay under 74.5 or you make payment through the DRC 03 challans, etc., please ensure that you lodge a letter of protest.
Okay.
Computer has not said that you cannot write any letters to the department. They are still sitting on the same chair. They are still warming the same chair. The person has not changed. Instead of wearing VAT uniform, he is wearing GST uniform. That's it. Person is the same. Please lodge a letter of protest. It is very important because these particular forms, these online thing, etc., do not allow you to make many amendments. And therefore, the system has handicapped. Today, the system has handicapped the assessee so much that it is impossible for us to make any changes or any amendments or any edits. I am not saying we want to make any changes in the system. It is something that I want to tell you. It is something that I want to inform you. How do I do it? If you see any of these forms on the all portal, with whatever limited, I have very limited knowledge. Please pardon me, please forgive me, all of you. I have very limited knowledge about this portal. Whatever portal I have seen, there is not a single column where you can type out, say that 5,000 words are allowed and the assessee, please communicate with us. No. Why? Why? You think Infosys is a fool? You think they don't have these systems? I do not want you to communicate with me. I will not allow you to say anything. I will ask you to do what I will ask you to, and you have to do in the same fashion. Therefore, please note, please do not be slaves of the system. Computer has not made man, man has made computer. We have to get over these computers. I am not against digital economy, please note, or I am not against digitization. I am not taking it back to 1920s. No, I am all for digitization. But it cannot be a hindrance in the way or manner that I want to function or I want to say something. Therefore, wherever that is not possible, please lodge a letter of protest. If anything has been done under coercion, please lodge a letter of protest.
Because what happens is
No, but
that a lot
sometimes
of
there's
times they
a-
don't even allow them to write it in the comment, because in the comments in DRC there is a comment, and
Yes,
there
they
have
don't
been
allow.
several times where I have told them they don't even allow them to write it.
They
So
don't
later
allow
on we
you.
file a letter. Yeah, they don't even allow them to write.
Yes.
So, and one more thing, there's a lot of pressure from the officers, that, the moment they launch that thing, that table thing, that you have to pay it through the DRC, every 2 days they will call, the payment has not come, we haven't got the thing. So, before we could write that letter of protest also in case. I mean, that pressure
No,
is too much.
I understand. I know, because it's easier said than done. Everybody will, all of you will say, sir, you come at a much later stage. You are like post-mortem specialist. Okay. We are there when the patient is in ICU. Okay. I understand. I completely understand your position. Therefore, I am saying, if it is not possible to save the patient through anything, at last what you can do is give him this vaccine shot and try to save him.
Yes,
Okay,
Sheetal madam,
sir, yeah.
you can pick up the vote of thanks. Vagani sir, you want to add anything?
No, nothing,
Sunil
only
ji?
just acknowledge the sir's knowledge only, that as you said, it was a very interactive, and we learn a lot from you, sir. A person like me who is not a law graduate, I also learned a lot. Then the other participant must have also learned a lot many things. And ITC is a subject, sir. It is a never-ending story. That there would be many more lectures from you on the ITC and other GST part also, and definitely will look in future also. And what I learned from this lecture, that we have to start one lecture series on the doctrine of the law. I mean, Path will agree, but doctrine of the laws. I mean, that we must start a new lecture series on that. And that recently, few days back, I learned doctrine of impossibility. The Supreme Court has just now has said in one of the matter, doctrine of impossibility. So we have to evolve a new doctrine and apply to the tax provisions. And it was a very good lecture from yourself, and we learned a lot many things on that point. And now the Sejal, you can perform the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Janakji. I think it was indeed a pleasure listening to Advocate Bharat Raichandani, and I think it was more of a learning session into the practical aspects. He rightly said that systems are created as a matter of procedure and do not give the handle in the hands of the tax officer. And these are the few things that, which have triggered us as practitioners. And there was a lot of important learning on the case laws, especially your concept on 36(4) and Rule 16. It really enlightened us, sir. And thank you so much for being here and enlightening us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I also thank
Thank
the
Thank you for having me, and
Parth
thank you for
Vadekar.
being with me for 2 hours. Okay. I know I don't add much value. I, in fact, learn more from all of you, and then I go back. I am, in fact, enriched than all of you. Okay. There is no unjust enrichment here.
Yeah, there is enrichment to everybody.
Yeah, we also learned, there was one more thing which we also learned, not to give the matchbox in the hands of a 2-year-old. So I think these examples made a conversation really live, and we learned a lot from your minute examples.
Yeah, there
I
has
would
been an
also like to
equitable
thank
distribution of
Parth
enrichment.
Vadekar. Yes. And the
Sorry,
chairman, Janak Bhai, and
No,
our
I said there has been
treasurer,
an equitable
Sunil.
distribution of enrichment.
Yeah, it
Sorry,
was a
Sheetal
very
madam.
good thing. Yes, yes. Okay, now let us
Thank you.
conclude now.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for a patient.
Thank you.
Thank you.